You know when you're in a museum and you see those statues of ancient Egyptian priests? They're just so serene, right? Carved from this solid, dark stone, their faces are totally calm, their eyes are staring off into, well, forever. You can't help but imagine them as these incredibly wise men, keepers of ancient secrets, living these pure, thoughtful lives.
And hey, we're not the only ones who thought that. The ancient Greek writer Porphyrius absolutely hit the nail on the head with this description. It's the perfect summary of that idealized image, right? A man of deep thoughts, simple living, and perfect justice. For hundreds of years, that's been the story everyone believed.
But was it really the whole story? Was the life of every single Egyptian priest really this perfect model of virtue? Okay, let's get into this, because when you actually start digging through the ancient records, a very different picture starts to take shape. A much more human one.
And to find the truth, we don't even have to guess. All we have to do is crack open a 3,000-year-old judicial file from the temple of the god Khnum, and what it shows us is less to do with quiet prayer and a lot more to do with a pretty shocking story of crime and corruption.
So let's meet the main character of our first big scandal, a priest by the name of Penenuki. Now the scene is set right after the super long reign of Ramesses II. The whole country is in a bit of chaos, and for a guy like Penenuki, an ambitious guy, well, chaos is a fantastic opportunity.
Penenuki and his buddies started off with something that was, frankly, incredibly bold. They looked at the sacred animals belonging to their god, Khnum, and basically decided, you know what, we could make some money here. So they sold them off to local soldiers for a nice little personal profit. But his crimes weren't just about the money. Oh no, he actually faked a divine oracle. He literally manipulated his community's most sacred beliefs to get what he wanted. And apparently on a trip to Thebes, he also managed to find time to seduce 2 married women.
This is where his greed just completely takes over. He graduates from selling sacred animals to stealing sacred treasures. He pinches a priceless amulet, and then just systematically starts emptying out the entire temple treasury for himself and his friends.
And this is where it gets really, really dark. To hold on to his power and to make sure nobody dared to speak up, Penenuki used extreme violence. He didn't just threaten the other priests who opposed him, he had their ears cut off and their eyes gouged out.
He basically finished his little crime spree by stealing a whole herd of oxen meant for the temple, and, just for good measure, setting several buildings on fire. But here's the most unbelievable part. The records show that after the trial, some of the other priests involved with him went on to have amazing careers.
And in case you're thinking Penawa was just one bad apple, his story wasn't a one-off. This absolutely chilling account comes from a papyrus that details a feud between 2 priestly families that lasted for 150 years. In this one horrific moment, priests chased 2 young men right into the sanctuary of the god Ammon and beat them to death. This wasn't a holy place, it was a crime scene.
So, you have to be asking, how was any of this possible? How could these sacred temples become hotbeds of corruption and violence? Well, the answer isn't really about a few bad people. It's actually baked into the very structure of what it even meant to be a priest back then.
So the most important concept in Egyptian belief was something called Maat. It's this idea of cosmic balance, of order, truth, and justice. And the one person whose job it was to maintain Maat on earth, it wasn't the priests, it was the Pharaoh. He and he alone was the high priest for all the gods of Egypt.
But obviously, a king can't be in thousands of temples every single day. So, and this is the key to everything, priests weren't spiritual guides for the people. They were basically functionaries, royal substitutes. The king delegated them to perform the rituals in his place. It was a job.
So how did you get this job? Well, there were 3 main ways in, and not a single one of them required you to have a spiritual calling or even, be a good person. You could inherit the job from your dad, just like a piece of furniture. The king could just give you the job as a political favor, or you could just buy the position.
And get this, for a lot of these guys, it wasn't even a full-time gig. You might serve in the temple for a few months, following all the strict purification rules, and then spend the rest of the year off duty, living a totally normal, everyday life. This whole rotation system just made that line between your sacred duty and your personal life incredibly blurry.
So, if a priest was just a functionary, what exactly was the temple? It was way more than just a place to worship. The big temples were basically massive economic corporations. They were like states within the state, controlling huge amounts of land, resources, and people.
To give you an idea of the sheer scale we're talking about, just look at this number. Under Ramesses III, the temple complex for the god Ammon at Thebes had over 81,000 people working for it. That's not just priests, that's a whole army of peasants, soldiers, and administrators. If you controlled that temple, you controlled a massive fortune.
And this chart just puts that power into perspective. I mean, look at the insane amount of wealth and manpower the clergy at Thebes had compared to even other huge religious centers like Heliopolis and Memphis. It's not even close. The stakes for controlling these places were just astronomically high, which kind of helps explain all that corruption we saw earlier, right?
But here's what makes this all so complex and beautiful. Despite all the scandals, the politics, the raw power, that spiritual ideal never actually died. This inscription from the temple at Edfu shows that the idea of finding real happiness and safety through pure dedicated service to a god, that was still very much alive and was something to be celebrated.
So, saint or sinner? I think the answer is that the serene stone statue in the museum is hiding a much messier, more human story. The Egyptian priest wasn't just one thing. He could be a civil servant doing a job, a political operator hungry for power, and yeah, sometimes a truly devout believer. In the end, it seems the sacred and the profane weren't really opposites at all. They were living right inside the same temple walls.
Thanks for watching, and if you liked the content, then please hit the like button.